right. Very good. My name is Haraldur. As Lisa said, I'm from Iceland. So I've been in this EID, industry EID business for almost 20 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Iceland and our experiences in this field. To start with, just I want to thank SK for inviting me. It's our pleasure to come over to your beautiful country, to Tallinn, beautiful city. So we really enjoy it here. So a little bit about Iceland. I don't know how much you know our country. We are a small country, a small nation, just like many of the countries that are here. So we are an island in the middle of, well, nowhere maybe. We're in the middle of the seas. So the settlement in Iceland was in 1874, and that was settled by some crazy Vikings. Well, that's the date that we kind of teach in schools. It might have been settled before, but that's the date that we kind of are teaching. One of the oldest parliament has been and is in Iceland. That was since 930, I would think. Our language is Icelandic, so we have our own language that is pretty similar to how basically the Vikings used to speak. Hasn't evolved that much as like Norwegian or Swedish. So pretty old language that can be difficult, well, both to study and to speak. We are roughly about 400,000 people in our country. Been growing, and like with many other countries, it's been growing with people moving to Iceland. So so we are Vikings. I'm going to be using using AI. We talked about AI before for some of our imagery. They created some images for me. Well, they did not create this image. This is actually my crazy. He's my wife's brother. Crazy Viking attending a football match when Iceland was attending the World Cup. So that was pretty special for us. So yeah, he's up here doing his bit. Little bit about our journey. So Auðkenni, that's the name of the company I work for. Auðkenni means basically identification, authentication. We were founded a year before SK, so a year earlier. And that was back in 2000. And at that time, there was plans basically to distribute certificates to everybody. And we were funded by the banks in Iceland and a major telco and an ICT company. So the plan was for every transaction to be signed and so on. But in 2000, we had a little hiccup in the ICT industry where we had the internet kind of bubble exploding. So those kind of plans were kind of put on the shelf. At that time, we had reports in Iceland that we really need to get this kind of EID infrastructure out there. We were missing everything. We were too late of doing it, and everyone was like big hurry. But then basically nothing happened. And the company focused on issuing like soft certificates and so on, website certificates for some time. Back in 2004-05, the government came in and asked the banks basically for cooperation in building an infrastructure to issue EIDs to the whole of the nation. At that time, the banks were planning to issue new cards, debit cards, with a chip on it. So everybody thought it was a good idea to put certificates on there. So that was planned, and that was being built. In the meantime, we issued OTP keys, basically, and this company, Auðkenni, was responsible for that. And that was kind of something to address attacks that were being made to the Icelandic banks. And this OTP scheme that Auðkenni was responsible for kind of stopped that. So that was really good. In 2008, we issued our first debit cards with certificates on them, and we have certificates for authentication and signature, and we're like qualified signatures. We also did it on a specific ID card issued from Auðkenni. And then in 2013, we started to use mobile ID, similar to what you have here in Estonia. So it's based on the SIM cards. We're using the SIM cards as secure devices. So we were searching for solutions at that time, like we called it the search for the secure element, and that was the solutions we went with. So we partnered with all the telcos in Iceland. So all the telcos in Iceland were, working with us and industry and government, and that is today our biggest solution. Then in 2021, we released Auðkenni app, and I'll talk a little bit about that. In 2022, there was a change of ownership in the company, so the government started talks with the banks in Iceland and thought it was a good idea for them to acquire Auðkenni. They think it's like a critical infrastructure thing. So basically that was sold from the banks to the government, so we are now owned by the Ministry of Finance today. But we'll see, we also had some competition laws kind of acquiring or requiring the government to reevaluate the ownership of this company every 5 years to say like, well, what's the need for the government to own a company like this? So, but today we're owned by the Ministry of Finance. These are our solutions. Just again, the mobile ID, SIM, the app, we issue e-seals and soft certificates, and our ways of onboarding are, we have self-services with our biometric solutions within the app, and that's kind of our main solution going forward, but we also have registration authorities, as you have here in Estonia, and they are all over the country, and it's in every bank branch, and then it's also at the telcos and at Auðkenni. So that's our coverage today. Well, we're actually adding the city of Reykjavik as our registration authority as well. And we're in talks with have been in talks with basically the police to open up at their kind of offices all around the country. So that will probably happen at some point. And also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to open up at like the offices all around the country. So all around the world, basically, at the embassies. But the need, obviously, for physical face-to-face registration authorities diminishes a bit with the self-service of where we're using biometrics. And that takes us to the app solution. So we entered into a formal partnership with SK IT Solutions back in 2019, I would think. We've been collaborating with SK, well, I have since 2005, maybe. That's the first time when I came into this and had meetings with representatives from SK. And we also like companies like Auðkenni. Auðkenni is similar to SK in many ways. We were kind of meeting up, well, we were meeting up with our Nordic partners like BankID, Norway, Sweden, and NemID or MitID in Denmark. All these schemes have been regularly just, in talks and sharing what we're doing. Because over the years, this has not been seen, at least these country schemes, not as competing schemes, but rather that's something we, help each other out or share experiences. We went live with the app in 2021, and then we went with biometrics in 2022, and now, and has been going well. It takes time to get this out. It takes time to get service providers to accept it, incorporate it into their processes and everything. And then it takes time, obviously, for people to get this. This is like a chicken and egg kind of thing, The service providers say, well, why should we kind of, do this? We'll wait until everybody has it. And people say, well, I'll get it, while all the service providers have it. But, today it's accepted by everybody. And the next big thing that we are really looking forward to is the app-to-app and QR code support into our app. And we might discuss that a bit, later. So that's, what we are kind of crossing our fingers with will help us quite a lot. Status of online services in Iceland. We are like probably the most, the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries, we have a high penetration. Everything is online today. So you can do most of the things online. And our solutions, EID, are distributed to most citizens. So we have about 95% of the population. Depends what you define. You have people living in the country, then you have people living abroad that also have our solutions. So most everybody. But we can still do better in that sense, though most of our citizens have an EID and are using online services, there are groups that are not able to use online services. And that's a topic I think that's becoming more and more important to the Nordic countries and Baltic countries. Those societies and our societies that have this maturity of online services. With that comes kind of exclusion. So people are feeling they're being left out. So, and rightly so. With most of the services going online, at least in Iceland, and we see it in some of the Nordic countries as well, the service level drops for like physical services and so on. And the case is that not all are able to use online services, and not all are able to get an EID. And take, for example, the scheme that we run. It's based on the EIDAS. And in that scheme, the regulation has built-in exclusion. In that sense, we have this concept of sole control. I don't know how well you know that. But then in the regulation, we have something called Article 15, where we talked about accessibility for persons with disability and special needs. So we are mandated by the regulation to do something about it. It's a bit vague. But on the other hand, we have requirements that are basically excluding people. So there we have challenges. And these types of challenges, they've been more and more focused on that over the last years within our society. And with people with disabilities, there's so many varieties of challenges out there on disabilities. So we've been doing some work trying to map this. And this is one way of doing it. We did this matrix. This is done by a company called Mensk. So this is kind of trying to group those different groups. So we have on one hand the ability to understand the consequences of using an EID, and on the other hand the ability to use EID. I mean, we have the group one that has the skills and understand the consequences, and majority are there. I mean, at least in theory. I mean, you can debate the understanding, but still, I mean, they are there. Then you have the group that has skills but does not understand the consequences. You have the group that understands the consequences but doesn't have the skills. And then you have the group that does not understand the consequences and does not have the skills either. And in group 3, for example, I mean, we have people with disabilities. I mean, like in our solutions, to use it, you have to select a PIN number and you have to enter that PIN number. So what happens if you don't have hands? Or you have some other disabilities that are kind of hindering you for doing this. So that's a challenge. And when people come to our offices and they're not able to do this, we have to deny them service. So and unfortunately, I mean, today with our current solutions, we don't have a solution for them. And that makes people, well, really angry. And because, I mean, the gateway to those online services has become the infrastructure that we run. And the service providers, basically, what they do, they just point to us. They say, well, you can get our services online, and you have to use an EID from, Auðkenni. Then people tell them, well, we're having troubles getting this EID. Well, you just have to talk to Auðkenni. So they're kind of putting their pressure over to us and the challenge to us. So this group is something, I mean, we need to figure out there. Then you have the group that has the skill, I can enter the PIN and everything, but I don't understand the consequences. So there you have variety of people. You have people with mental disabilities, obviously, so, and that is a big group. And then in this space you have a big gray area. This is really difficult. And our array officers, people that are working on doing the registration authority, they need to somehow measure this or make kind of a decision. Is that person able, does he understand? Does he understand when I'm speaking to him? Does he remember the PIN, understand and everything? And this is a judgment call, and it's really, really difficult. And then like in Iceland, this pressure is put on us because there are no standards. There are no kind of black and white kind of ways of measuring this. But it's not only people with disabilities that is in the groups. I mean, we probably all get there. We have our elderly, for example. And we see fraud related to that. I mean, they can do it, and they go through a process, but they don't understand what's happening. And they sometimes comes with relatives and so on that are kind of just controlling them. And if it's really obvious, then our registration officers, they need to kind of tell them, no, this can't do. And that's difficult, because, I mean, measuring that, you just imagine yourself, it's a challenge. But that's a challenge that we are kind of, is in our hands to take, and we are kind of made, well, our gatekeepers in that. But then you have this group that has both problems, or both ways, what to do there. And there we are looking at solutions like power of attorney and so on, because, I mean, we know, everybody probably know, at least in Iceland, that someone is helping a relative or someone accessing services and basically using their EID. And that is kind of, no, you can't do that. It's much better that you use your own and act on behalf of someone. So this is a group that we are, how can we kind of work on this issue and figure out solutions there? Because it's really important. And people or groups that are working, for example, in advocating the rights for these groups, they are also saying, well, we shouldn't be put in the same group. We should get the same service as everybody else. I don't want someone to, I don't want to give someone a mandate for me or power of attorney. I just want to do it myself. So what do you do with that? So we have challenges, but we can't shy away from them. I mean, especially, and we see this, I see this when I talk to my colleagues in Europe. I mean, this is completely different. I mean, if you look at the situation in the Nordic and the Baltics, we're a completely different place than in other parts of Europe. This is not a big issue. Inclusion on this stage is not a big issue. Because, I mean, a lot of the societies are having problems just to get someone using their EID or using online services. So, but we need to do something, and I think over the next years, this needs to be a focus for the Nordic countries and Baltic countries to address, and we need to figure out a solution to improve what we're doing, us and service providers. Another topic is fraud. We discussed that in previous, or talked about in previous presentation. So, I mean, I've been in this for almost 20 years, and a few years back, the main mitigation for fraud, like for online banking and so on, was to use those EIDs, the EIDs from us. So if you're using that, people weren't being frauded upon. I mean, people were using username, password, and OTP keys, and so other schemes. That was a problem, but with the EID, I mean, fraud wasn't really happening. But we've seen that changing over the years now. And the fraud that we are seeing is that people are being tricked basically to use their EIDs. So it's social engineering. And in Iceland, it's mostly related to financial fraud. So that is kind of, it's an important topic to address. And we see that there are people of all ages that are being kind of frauded on. I mean, we have young kids, and they get something up on their phone, and they just like, they just want to click it away. They're like, and then like, oh, what the fuck? Oh, sorry, what did I just do? So and we see this with all the apps that we're seeing. So and we speak to our banks. So and we basically tell them what's happening is that the fraudster is sending an authentication request to someone, and basically we, for example, talk to the banks. I don't know if you have any banks here in the room. Do we? Do we have representatives for banks? Yeah, very good. So what we tell our banks in Iceland, we say, well, you have the responsibility to kind of not send requests to our systems and to our customers, both customers, that are not initiated from them. You need to stop that. You need to make sure that the requests that I am getting are just initiated by me. That's easy to say, obviously, and I know that. But our systems that have been signed, they do a certain job and another job is done then. So, so the banks say, well, okay, we'll do something, but you also need to improve. You also need to mitigate this, or some just say you just need to solve it. So, So that's a dialogue we have. So we're like, okay, what can we do? Well, then comes to place, obviously, app-to-app and QR code. That's something that we can do. And that is kind of the next steps that we will be doing. So we speak to the banks, and then, I knock at SK's door, like, Jan, where's Jan? Jan is somewhere here. So please, can I get app-to-app and QR code? Yes, Jan. ASAP, thank you very much. So we can do stuff to improve, and we have to do that. But fraud is layered. Today, it's all based on layered security. There's no silver bullet. We have the ID solutions, what we have today and what we need to improve on, and so on. We have the fraud systems. And we have actually been looking into all of this because, these frauds are affecting the trust in our systems. The trust of people and service providers in our products. Though you could say that the fraud, and it's easy for us to say, well, you're a service provider, you just need to stop this. At the end of the day, it's something that is kind of hurting us all and the trust of us. And our customers, people, they don't know, they don't even care. They just, they're losing money, they're losing something, and we just need to solve this. So we are looking at ways of integrating, more fraud systems and so on. What can we do to mitigate this? Awareness is another thing. So obviously that is really, really important. We can't solve everything with technology. So we try to work both cross industry in Iceland with government, with the banks and everybody, and collaborating and raising awareness. And that will continue and will have to continue. We did this. This is something about awareness campaign. Don't get robbed or e-robbed. Rafræna þig. That's Icelandic. We're playing with words there. I don't translate that well. But mainly we're trying to get people to think before you click. Think before you act on something. If you're not sure, don't do it. So we need to think. And we're also campaigning with the service provider, actually, because most of the text that's coming in or popping into either it's our app or in our mobile solution is coming from the service provider. So the text needs to be good. It needs to be explanatory. It needs to be in context and so on for people to understand. So we are campaigning there. All right. Another topic, eIDAS 2.0. And well, especially the wallet. Is that going to solve everything? Maybe. Who knows? eIDAS obviously has has been implemented in the EU countries. It hasn't been implemented in the countries like Iceland. It will be, but it's in a legislative process. But still, it will be implemented as a regulation. So the EU Digital Identity Wallet. When I started this, as I say, 20 years ago, I attended an EU expert group meeting, and I was then young and a little bit naive, and in that meeting, I just held up my passport, like I have a solution for this. We just do the same as we do with the passports. Why can't we just do an e-solution of that? And obviously that wasn't well taken. I was kind of bombarded by the different countries that had their infrastructure. No, we have to do blah, 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 blah. I would have loved to have something like the wallet 20 years ago. But today, you're a bit late, I would think. If we look at the Nordics and the Baltics, we have EID schemes that are working. We don't need a new solution to solve that, I would think. It's working, and we even know that the emphasis should be on some many other things than just the EID schemes, because of the frauds and everything that's happening. We need to put focus on other things as well, maybe rather than another new solution. One of the things it's missing is the unique identifier that was decided on. We use unique identifiers heavily in the Nordic and Baltic countries, so it makes it a bit less useful. And then it's the big question of the business model. That is kind of, everybody does like this when you talk about the business model. So what's the business model? Well, we need to figure that out. Maybe we'll probably have a discussion on that a bit later today with the Commission. So, but that is unclear. Is it a new solution that's competing for the EID schemes in all those countries that have? Who's going to pay for what and how it's going to be? I mean, it's mandated to be used by like banks and others. But the main thing that I see is the EAA or QEA. This is a beautiful and nice word, Qualified Electronic Attestation of Attributes. So that's where we are kind of exploring opportunities. Can this infrastructure be used to create something for like power of attorney, our certificate, IT docs, obviously to take your driving license or what have you. We are participating in a project called NoBit. That's a large-scale pilot funded by the EU. And there we're working with the banks in Italy, Norway, and Iceland to incorporate payment credentials into the wallet, where you could use the wallet to pay, and that is account-to-account solutions. So could you use that to pay in your local retail store? So we're also working with the largest retailer in Iceland. So and the objective there, obviously, and I think from the EU, is to cut out the like schemes like MasterCard and Visa. So try to do something addressing that. So we'll see how this will go. This is just one way of, an example of our wallet, what the information you have, like we have the PIT, personal identification data. Then you could do something like a power of procurement and the national ID, because the unique identifier isn't in the PIT. So we are thinking, and other countries are thinking, should we put it in the as a special attribute, and that be used to access services, because all services are kind of dependent on the social security number in Iceland. So should that be as a special attribute if it's not included in the PIT? So we'll see how this will go. Yeah, we'll just have to see. Just looking ahead, I mean, where will we go? Obviously, there are loads of challenges, and we've seen some changes over the years. And obviously, in our business, things tend to happen slow, especially in those you need to get something out there with physical attendance of people. Now, with all these solutions, self-services, the biometrics, and so on, we can do much faster, and we have to do much faster. But we have to think about, quantum computing, AI, everything. How will this affect us? And this is AI kind of interpreting those questions in an imagery format. So we'll see. But we have to do better in fraud, security, and we have to do better in inclusion, definitely. And that's where I think our emphasis will be over the next coming years. So, at the end, questions maybe. Are we there?
We have questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Iceland seems like a second best where to live beside Estonia.
Second best?
Yeah, second best.
It's good, but it's cold there though.
Okay.
Sometimes.
But it's global warming.
Global warming?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might make us better, it might make us worse, because they're saying that one of the currencies might go away, then we'll freeze. But, we have hot tubs and volcanoes.
Okay, there are some questions, but seems that people are curious about the country and your language. So they ask you to pronounce Auðkenni very slowly, that they could understand.
Auðkenni.
Once again.
Auðkenni. Auðkenni.
Yeah.
Auð, we have this D letter with like a eth. Auðkenni.
Okay.
I can answer all the questions in Icelandic if you want to hear Icelandic.
Okay.
Yes?
Then one question, geographical question, is then you showed the map of your array offices, and there was nothing in the middle. What's happening in the middle?
What's happening? Well, we have some ice and we have volcanoes. We have nature, basically. So during the summer, it's really accessible. Well, it's accessible. People are going there all year round. But no, we don't really have one. A lot of people living there in the middle. But it's just our nature. And we are debating all the time if we should, for example, use our nature to create energy, like waterfalls and so on, or should we just keep it intact? But we're not putting arrays there.
Okay, more to the topic. You talked about frauds. And are the attackers in Iceland more doing phishing attacks local, or are the attacks mostly international in origin? And who are the interested party to do that?
Yeah, I mean,
who cares?
Who cares about Iceland? Who cares? No, I mean, we see attacks on the Nordics, basically, and we are included in a lot of those attacks. So we see general attacks, and then we see specific attacks. And what we see, a lot of the attacks that we're seeing now is that someone is kind of basically utilizing social media. So they are hacking into people's Facebook accounts, and they're utilizing Messenger to start communication or drop into communication. So you're communicating with your friend, someone, and they just take that communication over and trick people to do stuff. And it's extraordinary how they manage to do that. And for normal people, you don't kind of assume that you are in a dialogue on Messenger with someone, that all of a sudden there's an attacker talking to you.
But these are local ones then, or?
No, most of them are from a certain country that we don't speak about.
All right.
No, I mean, but we don't see. And with AI, for example, that gives us tools with, you don't have to know Icelandic. Icelandic used to be a defense for us because we could see it, it's like bad language. But today, we've been pressuring everybody like OpenAI and so on to support Icelandic. And that is good and that's bad as well because that becomes available for the attackers.
Does the Icelandic government have any social programs to provide cyber hygiene education in the public?
No.
Okay.
Not really. But that's what we are pressing for, and I have been pressing with, do with the police and everything that we need to this needs to be addressed. You need to have skills, basically. How do you get? You get driving licenses. You have to have a license to drive. Maybe you have to have a license to drive online or do something online. I don't know. It's being debated.
Okay, good. How much of resources should be allocated to deal with accessibility, considering that the proportion of disabled population is so minor?
Yeah, obviously more. You could argue that it's probably just cheaper to just drive to people's home and do stuff like that because the variety is so wide. You have a small group here, another group, and another group, and there's no silver bullet in this. So this needs to be addressed in a wider concept. This needs to be addressed by a bigger crowd. Then it makes sense to develop something. We can't. It's difficult for us to develop something on our own. So, but we can't just turn our eye on this. We have to do something. We won't be able to serve everybody. But we can do so much better.
Okay, and what is your experience about normal people? It says normal people.
What's a normal person?
Without disability, who sometimes feel disabled because of the bad we and the Wix.
No, generally this is working, obviously. And everybody's, wanting to have everything faster and easier and everything, and we know this. And as I say, they used to be, our vulnerable groups used to be like elderly and so on, but now it's the kids, it's the young people, and they are just like, they're clicking away, they're like, everything fast and like, and then they do something else they may be used to, with TikTok and everything is like fast. So how do we kind of, have a discussion with our younger, and to kind of educate them and like, no, you need to slow down in this. This is something that you need to like, not rush into, but it's difficult.
Question about the Auðkenni app. What are the industries what are using your authentication app? Non-government and non-bank ones. Okay, seems someone from SK wants to know where it is used.
Well, it's used basically everywhere in Iceland now. So most of our service providers are utilizing our services, have now added support to our app. So, and that is going to be our main solution, and that's going to happen quickly. And we could even foresee, and we're debating it, when to close the mobile solution. And what we're seeing with this increase of fraud and everything, that we can address it within the app, but in the mobile solution, we can't. Mm-hmm. So we might see that in not relatively short distance, that service providers might just close access to it, because we can do so much more with the app, and also it's much easier to onboard to it with biometric onboarding and so on. So we'll see changes soon.
Small remark: the app, the Auðkenni app, Basically, this is based on our smart ID.
Yes.
Yes. And all transactions of Icelandic people go through
Estonia.
Estonia.
So when you do something in Iceland, first you visit beautiful Estonia, then you go back. So if you close your digital borders, we are fucked. So please don't.
You mentioned about mobile ID. There is a question, what's your plan with eSIMs and future of Icelandic mobile ID? But you said that you're closing, but...
Our strategy is the app, not to do anything with the eSIM. I mean, the question there is that, I mean, it's technically doable and everything, but, because we have this we use it for qualified signatures and so on. There are no certification or anything on those eSIM or SIM cards that are being used by the Googles or the Apples. So our strategy is the app.
But coming back to fraud, how the local legislation protects users who don't understand the consequences and become victim of the fraud. Is there any local law present?
No, there's no local. I mean, there's basically EU law. And it has been changing. Well, I mean, like we have the anti-money laundering laws, the EU laws, and now there will be more focus like with the legislation DORA that's coming for financial services that are putting more pressure on financial services. But there's nothing specific in Iceland. It's basically all EU laws that is addressing this.
What would be the biggest leap Iceland could take to lower fraud level?
The biggest?
Yeah.
I mean, that is in kind of our mitigation. That is kind of the soonest to get to address. It's coming from Jan. He's probably going to talk about it a bit later with this app-to-app thing and QR code. So, Jan. No, but I mean, it's all about, we need to build up competences in being constantly moving and, developing new mitigations because the attackers are kind of, and we saw that the industry is huge. So if they decide to attack someone like Iceland, it's going to be difficult and challenging. So we need to build up an infrastructure, competences to kind of evolve and mitigate those threats and work together. And that's one of our strengths in Iceland. Everybody's working together. You're just a phone call away from the bank or forever, so we can act quite quickly. And it's pretty similar to the Nordics as well. We have good cooperation. So that's our strength. We can work together and we can move quickly. And that's more difficult maybe like in the big countries or in the US or UK. So that's one of our strengths that we need to kind of utilize.
Wallet. What are Auðkenni plans and views related to wallet?
I mean, we don't have plans today. I mean, we are participating in this pilot and just exploring how the opportunities and what we can do with it. As I say, I mean, we need something. We need an infrastructure for power of attorney and those kinds of things that we need, for our groups that are not able to have EIDs and so on. So we are exploring, is this something that can be useful for that? So that's our main kind of focus with the wallet. And also just, is this going to, happen? And if it's going to happen, what's our role in it? We want to be prepared if this kind of flies off.
Okay, there is one longer question. Is there a fraud on getting the identity in office or via biometric method? Or is this a non-issue? And if so, should you make it easier to get it to increase inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, no, we're not experiencing fraud. We haven't had any fraud with the biometric solutions. We've had fraud with, going to a local array. But, I mean, it's nothing. It's just, very, very, seldom. And it's, in one hand, basically. So the fraud is mainly happening where people are being tricked to use their EID. That's the main fraud. But not at the phase of getting it issued.
Okay,
so.
Good. Second best.
Yes.
Last question. Would you suggest SKID solution to some other friendly country?
To some them?
To some other friendly country.
Oh, yeah.
Do you recommend us?
Does it need to be friendly country? I would recommend it to you all. Also
Thank
unfriendly.
You. Applause.
Definitely.
Can we have an image? And Mr. Kalev present. Wow.
All right. Very good.
Debit card, man.
Debit card, man. We're out of the debit card business now. we only have our app, Smart ID-based app.
So
This
you
is
were
a small present for you.
Oh, thank you. Cake.
Thank you, and
much.
Haraldur, you will be back in the discussion panel later on.
Right. Thank you.